morning, Angela. How are you?
Morning, Peter. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yes, I'm absolutely brilliant. It's
Good.
always a couple of notches up whenever the sun is shining in Northern Ireland, like it is
Yeah.
while we're doing this interview. So, yes, all good. Angela, thanks very much for taking the time to chat with me this morning. I really appreciate it. Welcome to the NI Business Podcast. Could we start? Could you tell me a little about yourself, your background, and your business, please?
Yes, Peter, sure. Well, thanks very much for having me on the podcast. So I'm the joint managing director of Diamond Systems. So we're a Belfast-based specialist in life safety and security systems. So we have been keeping people safe across Northern Ireland and beyond since 1987. So my dad started the business back then, and we cover all of Northern Ireland and beyond. I came into the business about 17 years ago in 2008. I trained as an accountant when I left university and then came into the company. And now I work alongside my brother. We're both joint managing directors. So my brother Steve, we look after the technical side of the company. And I would look after then finance, administration, business development, marketing, anything non-technical really. With a lot of operational KPIs to meet for our accreditations and so on. So I would oversee all of that. So we're very heavily regulated and very high quality in terms of the service and the products that we deliver to our clients.
So I'm working it out. There was about a 20-year gap from your dad starting the business and you joining. Was it something that you always thought you would end up doing, or did it just happen?
I think I always knew that I wanted to go into business. Maybe not necessarily this one at the outset, but even thinking back, as a young child during the school holidays, I loved nothing more than setting up a stall at the end of the driveway and selling my old books or toys or teddies and things. I just loved the idea of making money and being able to serve clients and so on. We used to have a red setter dog, and my dad and I would have gone out at night and walked the dog, and I suppose that was his release and his headspace. So him and I would have had a good chat about the challenges that he'd faced that day or any new sales that he'd won, and it really excited me. So I always knew I wanted to go into business. I did, as I say, go down the chartered accountancy route first, which I think is a great entry into business and opens up so many doors for young people. But yeah, then as I say, once I qualified, I'd done a couple of years then with the firm in Belfast that I qualified with. And then I thought, right, I want to come into the firm. And at that stage, my dad was starting to think about semi-retiring, and so it was a good time to come in. As I came in, he kind of ramped down the hours that he did, and it worked quite well in terms of a succession plan there.
And help me understand about your target market, Angela. Who do you enjoy working with, and who benefits most from working with Diamond Systems?
Well, I suppose there's three elements really to our business. So the first one would be any new works projects. So that's mainly in the construction sector where we're going in and installing brand new systems, be it CCTV, fire alarms, intruder alarms, access control alarms, that sort of thing. So in that segment, our customers would mainly be M&E contractors. And we'd work very closely with the design consultants who are designing the systems that go into those large buildings. So it might be a new hotel, a new college, student accommodation, or even arenas and things like that. We do tend to do large scale projects with the new work side of the business. But also home alarms, could be a new home alarm system, and we're going very much down the smart IoT route with that. So integrating your alarm system with your heating, your lighting. There's so much intelligence now that can be done. So that's the kind of the new work side of the business. Then we have our service and maintenance division, and that's where we go out and maintain fire and security systems that may or may not have been installed by us. So we have a team there that go out and do all that and provide emergency response. So we're on call, 24/7, Christmas Day, everything. We would have calls coming in with a team of engineers available to respond, with a 4 hour response time through our accreditation body to meet. So it never stands still, we're always on. And then the third sort of division within the business then would be compliance and training, which is where we can offer fire warden training, fire risk assessments, even design support, design verification to consultant engineers and so on, which is something relatively new that we've organised. So there's a lot happening and quite a broad range of clients that we work with, as I say, in Northern Ireland and beyond.
And what would you say has been your biggest lesson since becoming joint MD?
Um, Well, the joint MD works very well for us because my brother and I have two very different roles. So we don't tend to overlap too much. And we've both got quite different personalities. So it works well for us. I think just generally as a sort of a business owner or business leader, the biggest lesson I have had is that, the importance of delegation if you want to grow your business. There's only so much that you physically can do and mentally as well on your own. So if you really want to try to grow or, scale the business, you have to be comfortable delegating and you have to be comfortable letting go a wee bit of control. But in doing so, you have to make sure that your systems are robust enough to allow others to come behind you and do it to a high standard. So I'd be a big advocate of lean working and, documenting steps and processes very clearly and unambiguously so that things can be delegated and then everybody steps up a level and the whole thing does grow. So I think that's something that small business owners particularly find it hard to get their head around is the importance of delegation. But also when you do delegate then and your team does start to grow, you need to have a really clear vision and be really clear about the purpose of the business so that
Mm.
everybody's aligned with, where you want to take it. That's very important. So those things, when you first start out, you don't realize all of this and it does take a while to learn, but speaking to mentors and so on is a great way to do that and to get to
Yeah,
where you need to be.
it's such a great share for anyone out there, whatever size of business, is, systems, get systems. Great businesses are run by great systems and great
That's right.
systems are run by great people. So yeah, great share. And what have you learned about yourself along the way, Angela?
I think particularly in the last, 5 or 6 years with all the challenges that we've had with the pandemic, the cost of living crisis, all the skills shortage, I think I've learned just how resilient I am, and how determined I am. I think I get a lot of that from my dad, but also how ambitious I am too, and I do feel having come through the last 5 or 6 years particularly, I do feel like there's no challenge that I can't take on now. I do feel a lot stronger and a lot more confident in my own ability. Um, so, I think those would be the key things. I think, you have to just keep showing up every day and keep motivating everybody, even when times are hard. And in business, you're always going to face hard times, no matter what the economy's doing, in your own business as well. So those are the main things, I think.
And what about influence along the way? Who's
Yeah.
influenced you the most along the way?
Yeah, well, I've mentioned my dad. He'd have been a big influence, particularly back in the 90s. There wasn't as many high profile business people out there as there are nowadays, and now it's really, cool to be a business person, an entrepreneur, whereas in those days, everybody was kind of pushing you down a professional route, if you like, in inverted commas, rather than the entrepreneurial route. So I think that's been a really good change. But I think just collectively, the people within your network are really big influencers, so it's about getting into the right networks, and those networks might change over time as you as a person evolve and your business evolves. So it's okay to move with that. But like I would be in some great lean networks, for example, and the collaboration and the openness to share there is just incredible. Northern Ireland is just leading the way with lean. I think a lot to do with Ryan Tierney and Seaton Matters and what those guys have done. But also I've been the natural resilience network with Kieran May and all of the great things he's doing for wellness and mental health and so on for business leaders. Um, so I think Northern Ireland, everyone is so willing to help each other and help each other's business grow. It's a fantastic place to be working at the minute.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a buoyant place at the minute,
Yeah,
definitely,
yeah.
for business. So, and what about 17 years down the line, Angela? What gets you out of bed with a spring in your step in the morning and drives your passion for your business?
Yeah. I think just being really clear about the purpose, what we do, you could say, oh, we install fire alarms or we maintain CCTV systems, but I always say, particularly to the new apprentices coming in, it's not just that. What we're doing is keeping people safe. We're not there just to service a system. We're there to make sure that in the event of a fire, people are warned, they have enough time to evacuate the building and everyone goes home. So I think when you have a really clear sense of your purpose, it drives your passion, and then like I don't feel like I'm coming into work every day. I feel like I'm in a privileged position to be able to keep people safe out there. So I think, you know, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, and I think Diamond Systems, we're really leading the way in trying to raise the bar, locally and, UK wide in terms of the standards of the systems that are going in, the competency of the engineers, we're driving that, but also awareness for building occupiers and facility managers as to what legally they're responsible for, and the setting the standard a bit higher, because I think for too long it hasn't been where it needs to be, and then we end up with horrific tragedies like Grenfell, for example. So
Mhm.
I really feel that we're doing our best to try to improve things. So that really fuels my passion for what I do.
And what about are you a reader, or are there any podcasts that you've listened to? Is there anything you'd like to share that's particularly got your attention?
Yes, well, I am a really big reader. I read all the time. I read a lot of books. Recent books that I've read, The Go-Giver, even just things like that. If you're particularly in networking, if you're going out and networking, help your network and it will help you. I love, Brendan McGurkin, Claire Colvin's book on simple scaling and the Scale X framework. I've read it probably about 5 times now. I just keep going back to it. And podcasts, again, love Kieran May's podcast. I listened to some of those last week when I was away on holidays, with some really brilliant local entrepreneurs. So anything that, highlights Northern Ireland and how well we have all done, I really love. When I went on holidays last week, I said, right, I'm going to try to switch off from business. I'm not going to bring any business books this time, for probably the first time in a lot of years. So I was in Belfast and went into a second-hand bookstore, and straight away, first book I saw was Mary Peters, Lady Mary Peters' book. And it just spoke to me because I'm actually going to an event in September that she's speaking at. So I thought, right, I'll bring that with me. Couldn't put it down. I had it read in about a day and a half. I just think she's just such a great ambassador for Northern Ireland, and everything that she's done for young people getting into sport and everything. So I'll highly recommend, if you're heading away on holidays, get a copy of that, because it was a really brilliant read.
Oh, well, I'll make a note of that. And what about what's the biggest challenge that you're currently facing in business?
I think, as I mentioned, they're just trying to raise the bar in terms of fire, particularly in Northern Ireland, so that we are competing on a level playing field, because, for too long, price has been the determinant factor in the selection of
Mm.
fire alarm companies and specialists and so on. And I think, we need to educate people who are procuring these systems that there are risks to cutting corners and going for the cheapest option all the time, and there are risks to life safety at the end of the day. So when specifications are downgraded and changed, and things are left out and certificates aren't provided and so on by contractors who are doing the work for much less price, there's a big public risk there, because a lot of these buildings will end up frequenting, whether it be your local leisure centre or a cinema, or an arena or whatever. So I think the biggest challenge is just really to try to raise awareness of what is required legally, what is best practice, and get everybody singing off the same hymn sheet, really, in terms of that.
Yeah, it's so true. I saw a thing recently. I can't remember where I saw it, but it was like three shark cages that you had to
Yeah,
pick from. And would you go for the cheapest shark cage? Not a chance, And yeah, it's very true.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
What about, let's go off piste here. So if you could invite any three people to a dinner party, who are you going to invite?
Well, I think, given that I read her book last week, I would love to have Lady Mary Peters there. And particularly if she could meet my daughter, because my eldest daughter actually trains a lot at the Mary Peters track.
Fantastic.
And a couple of years ago, she won the Ulster Schools cross country championship as a result of all her training. So I would really love to see Mary Peters and just thank her for everything that she's done for young people getting into sport and for the spotlight she's shown in Northern Ireland. I think from a business perspective, another guest I would love to have would be Karen Brady. You know, be a big
Oh,
admirer of her, and she's a real trailblazer for women in business. So I'm hoping to go to a conference that she's speaking at in London in September. So I might even invite her over for dinner. I can speak it to.
right. What's the
Um,
worst that could happen?
well, that's it. She can only say no. And then I think somebody like Peter Kay, because just to bring a bit of humour to the whole thing, because I went to see him in the SSA Arena a few years ago and the tears just rolled down my face. I just think he's so funny. So I think
Yeah,
he would add a bit of humour to the night.
that'll be a great night. What about if you could go back in time, Angela, and give some advice to your 18-year-old self? I'm sure it wasn't that long ago, but if you could do it, what would that be?
Um, my 18-year-old said, well, I think I would say sit down and really have a good think about the career choices that you want to make and develop a roadmap. Find a mentor in the sort of field that you want to go into, from an early stage and listen to their advice. When we're young and we're in our late teens and early 20s, we're maybe not as wise as what we are now. But I think if you have a good support network there that can guide you down the right roads, and you maybe don't waste time veering off and spending years doing something you maybe don't actually want to do. I think that's really important. And, just do something that you enjoy doing and it will never feel like work. It's a cliche saying, but it is really true.
And if you could, let's fast forward. So tell me, what does Diamond Systems look like in 5 years' time?
5 years time. Well, where I want to be in 5 years' time is that if you were to ask anyone across the UK and Ireland who is the best life safety and security company in Northern Ireland, they will say Diamond Systems. Go and speak to Angela Bennett. So I don't want us to be the biggest life safety and security company or the cheapest. I just want us to be the best and to be known as the best. I think we're the best at the minute, but I want others to think we're the best too. And it's just about, acting with integrity, sticking to your principles, not cutting corners to win jobs at lower prices when you can't deliver for that. So it has got us through from 1987 to now, sticking to those principles. So I'm gonna continue that with that legacy. And yeah, that I won't stop until we get there. So that'll be it.
Sounds like a plan. And if somebody likes what they've heard, Angela, and would like to reach out and get in touch with you or the business, what's the best way for them to go about that?
Well, connect with me on LinkedIn. Drop me a LinkedIn message would probably be the easiest thing. I'd love to chat more about all these things that I'm so passionate about. And we also run workshops here in the office for uh, building owners and building managers who maybe aren't as familiar as they need to be in terms of what they need to be doing to comply with fire alarm legislation in Northern Ireland. So I'd love to invite them in for that and have a chat with them.
That's very kind of you. Well, look, Angela Bennett from Diamond Systems, thank you so much for sharing your story and your passion for business. It's been really cool chatting with you, and I wish you every success for the rest of this year and the future. So, Angela, thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Peter.